Hello there. Welcome back to the R.M.Williams Outback podcast, where we shine a light on all the absolutely fantastic things that are happening and the fantastic people away from the bright lights of our cities. We focus on the 3 R's of Australia. That's remote, rural and regional. We're just like the beautiful R.M.Williams Outback Magazine, except for your ears. I'm Terry Cowley, one of the journalists on the magazine and also your podcast host. Settle in with us and you'll get to meet some really great people, and I don't mean me. Have a question? Find out more at outbackmag.com.au.
Did you ever think about taking a gap year when you finished school? Maybe you actually took one, or maybe your child or grandchild is considering taking one. From working on cattle stations to childminding in remote locations and experiencing life in the military, many of Australia's school leavers are heading bush for a formative 12-month period before settling down to study or work. Journalist Kirsty McKenzie has immersed herself in the gap year for a major feature in Outback Magazine's 164th issue. And as she found out, far from being a year of slacking off or fun and games, it's a serious business. She also found out not all gappers, if that's what we can call them, are actually school leavers. Welcome to the podcast, Kirsty.
Thanks for having me, Terry.
Perhaps we can start our talk where you start your story, Kirsty. Tell me about gapper Alex Ho and why he's such a good example of what a gap year can achieve.
Alex is just totally out of the box. He has no agricultural background. He grew up in the city, but he was obsessed with all things farm. He just wanted to be a cowboy. As a little boy, that's all he wanted to do. And he thought, okay, I'll just get a job on a station. Unfortunately for him, it wasn't quite that easy because he didn't come from a station. And it's not that that is a complete black mark against his name, but it made it more difficult for him to get that job. He discovered a program, which is a federal government funded, run by the National Farmers Federation, called Ag Career Start, and that's how he got his start. And he started, first of all, on a station, a sheep and cropping station in the Eyre Peninsula. And then he had such a good time, he decided to do another gap year. And he ended up on Barkly Downs, on the Barkly tablelands. And he did 2.5 years in the end of a gap year, which was more than a year, obviously.
So a great example of, if you don't come from that sort of background, you shouldn't be deterred.
No, precisely. And interestingly, talking to some of the big pastoral companies and people who are in the position to hire GAP students or gappers, they say that attitude is much more important than aptitude. So the kids who are willing to knuckle down and learn are going to be favoured over people who think they've been there, done that, just because they've grown up on a farm.
Fair enough. Give us some of the stats, Kirsty. I believe Alex belongs to the 14% of Australian school leavers who take a gap year.
Yeah, interestingly, that's 1 in 7 kids will take some form of a break between either finishing high school and starting uni or further study or whatever it is they end up doing. Interestingly, particularly for young people from the regions who will have to travel to go to university, a gap year is more appealing because it gives them a break, time to earn a bit of money, if not to, certainly not to pay their huge debts that they're about to accrue, but to make life a little bit easier when they finally get to uni or wherever it is they're going. That comes with its advantages and disadvantages. Taking a year off can, to a certain extent, isolate you from your peer group if you do go back to wherever home was or is. But by and large, it's better to have the money behind them, and that tends to be why kids from rural and regional parts of Australia choose to do a gap year.
Yeah, obviously money is key. I think in your story you say Federal Department of Education data shows that students who take a gap year or years to save money, as you said, are generally from remote or regional locations and usually come from families with lower incomes. And unsurprisingly, the proportion of gap year takers working during their time off declines for students coming from the top 20%, most advantaged areas of Australia. In good news for parents, research did find that taking a gap year had little effect on completion of degrees. And I know that would certainly be one of my concerns as a parent, that year off between, high school study and university study might derail study plans.
Yeah, that's an interesting misconception, isn't it, that I shared. And then I spoke with a psychologist, academic and educator, R.M. Lemon from Edith Cowan University in Perth. And she had some really interesting stuff to say about how a gap year is almost preventative mental health or a well-being process that gets you ready for study, which is going to be arduous for however many years that you choose to do it. She also said that the students who do a gap year come back better motivated, better students, more focused and definite about what they're doing and why they're doing it. And those benefits far outweigh the odd, really very few students who don't return to study at all.
It's almost like they've had time to think, haven't they, about what they really want to do. Yeah. And the fact that this Dr. Narelle Lemon has done this research, I think shows the concept of a gap year is being taken seriously.
Oh, I think very much so. Narelle said that, interestingly, the data shows that young men particularly, and young men who haven't performed all that well at high school, so for whatever reason, they haven't really been knuckling down at high school, actually return to study with better aptitude, better focus, and, do better as a result of having taken the time out. She uses that suggestion that it's almost like getting yourself ready for the rigours that you're going to face in life and at university.
I like your line that Narelle cautions that even in paradise there are serpents.
Yes, that's right. She says it's not going to be full of Instagram moments, and they're inevitably gappers will be perhaps homesick, perhaps challenged.
Which is the whole point.
Yeah, which is, as she says, that's when they emerge because of the challenges as stronger, better people.
When the magic happens. So you looked into the history of how the idea of a gap year started. I thought that was so interesting.
Absolutely fascinating that it's really a construct. Okay, travelling to broaden the mind is hardly a new concept, but rolling forward to somewhere in the 60s, it actually emerged from an anomaly in the education system in the UK where students who are graduating high school finish their exams the end of the year, I think it is, and then they have to wait until the following September to start if they're going to Oxford or Cambridge universities. So they've got these 9 months of, could be twiddling their thumbs, could be broadening their minds, whatever. And so an enterprising headmaster actually invented a program which was called Gap Activity Projects, hence GAP, Gap Year, for precisely that, to fill that gap between finishing high school and starting university.
You even found some origins in the 17th century, the European Grand Tour.
Yes, yeah. What a lovely concept.
I'd like to do one of those.
Yes, we'd all like one of those. Thank you very much. Just visiting the historic sites and the art galleries of Europe. Thank you. Yes. And I'm sure most gappers, well, not most gappers, but the gappers who go to Europe and the UK or even the US probably do their fair share of seeing the sites.
You noted that these days gap years are big business.
Any number of businesses are out there just waiting to take your money to help you smooth the path for, be it travel, finding employment.
Volunteering.
Volunteering the word should come with air quotes because it's surprising how much it costs to volunteer. And that was another thing that I wasn't aware of before I did this story, that you can pay up to $250 a day, say, for the privilege of, helping somebody less fortunate than yourself.
Don't get paid to work, pay to work.
That's right. Yes. Rather work on a station.
Mm. You spoke to Consolidated Pastoral Company's People and Safety Manager, Catherine Graham, about how the company opens its entry-level station positions each year. And I think you mentioned it before. She was the one that said they're really looking for attitude rather than aptitude.
That's exactly right. And it's interesting that I was on another CPC station earlier in the year, well, right at the beginning of this year, Isis Downs, and I was talking then with the manager of the co-manager of Isis Downs, Tarina Salt, and she said to me that one of the things, because of course they have a lot of young people on their team, and some of them are people on a gap year, and she mentioned that one of the things they look for is, or she looks for when she's recruiting, is what you've done at school. If you've been involved in a team, if you've played sport or even debating or whatever, something that indicates that you're not going to let your mates down when the going gets tough, that you know how to show up, that you work and you get involved. And that's something that Catherine Graham also echoed by saying, in October, when the mustering's not done, it gets hot, it gets horrible, and it really sort of is not really good for the team when somebody pulls the pin, as was their expression. So bad for morale when someone just ups and leaves. Being able to demonstrate that you have actually participated in some group activity as a contributor is a nice thing to have on your CV.
Yeah, stamina to stay the distance is important because, as you say, it can be very tough at times.
And I think an element of physical fitness probably helps as well. It's interesting that one of my big takeaways was from talking with Shana O'Brien, who did the equivalent of a gap year about a decade ago. And she was reflecting, with that hindsight of distance about, how changed her particularly, but also how there was this custom in the camp that if you fell off your horse, you had to shout a carton of beer. And she was in the fortunate position of having trained as a gymnast. So even though she fell off, she always managed to land on her feet. So they waived the requirement that she had to buy a beer.
Very nice of them. Very nice of them. Catherine also, while acknowledging the hardships, points out that, pay and conditions are much improved these days on stations.
Indeed. How very interesting that was. She says, okay, $40,000 to $50,000 a year mightn't sound like very much money. But as a station hand, or, in fact, anybody working on a station, you get free rent. You don't pay board. You don't pay for your food. And most nights, someone actually cooks it for you. And you get free internet or Wi-Fi. You get lots of other perks that add to the value. And she says that makes it approximately a $90,000 salary, which is not bad for a school leaver.
With limited places to spend it.
Absolutely. Though a few of the young people I spoke with mentioned the perils of internet shopping.
Yes, of course. That could be a trap. You did mention Ag Career Start earlier, funded by the Australian Government Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry and administered by the National Farmers Federation, which is interesting. It matches young people aged 17 to 25 with paid farm employment and also provides a bursary for successful candidates to travel and upskill during their gap year. The project manager, Kayla Evans, said it's the first truly cross-sectional national structured farm placement program.
I think she said they place 70 school leavers a year. And the thing is, it places them in not just on farms. I mean, if you're into oyster farm, well, they are farms, but oyster farming, it's all aspects of food and fibre. So it's a very broad range of professions that it actually opens the door for. And then the other thing is that they can use that bursary for whatever they choose, as long as it's something that's an adjunct or going to make them better performers at their job. So if you want to learn to shear a sheep and, you're working on a station, that's a good idea, presumably. Class wool, grade oysters, whatever courses are available, you can spend your money on that.
Yeah, it's a real win for the person and also for the industry.
Absolutely.
You spoke to another young man, 19-year-old George Swanson. Tell me about his experience, Kirsty.
Yeah, well, George comes from a station, a cattle station, and he comes from Augathella, which is in central Western Queensland. So he went home for a year after school, and then he just decided that he needed a broader range of experience. So he headed north to a big cattle station, and he's having a great life up there. He mentioned that being in a large team, I think there were 26 in the team on the station. So he said even though they're, sort of a bit isolated or relatively isolated, the team provides the social life. And they might work, 10 days, a fortnight on and then have some time off. But that doesn't really matter because they've got their own social life in between their time off. George eventually hopes to have a place of his own. So he just sees it as an opportunity to learn as much as he can, as quickly as he can, from as many different people as he can. And it sounds like he's well on the way to his future career.
George said that university was never in his game plan. So I think it's important to note that a gap year is not just a year between study and study. It may just be a year between study and work.
Absolutely. Yeah. And he said he may do an apprenticeship, which is, obviously another career path. And again, whatever he chooses to do will probably make him more attractive to future employers or to his end game. I mean, I can't imagine there's any station in the whole country that doesn't need a mechanic, an electrician, an auto electrician, a builder, whatever. All those skills are really important.
Now, we've talked a lot about stations and agriculture, but there are many other options for gappers. One of the ones that you did look at was being a governess or a nanny. And in that context, you spoke to a couple of people. First off, Emily Curran.
Emily's from Newcastle in New South Wales. So, a big regional city. Well, she's aiming for the longest gap year possible. She's in fact in her third gap, nearly 3.5 years of gapping. She did a stint as a school leaver. She started in the UK as a teaching assistant in a private school. She did that for 2 years. And then she came home and started an education degree. And then she went travelling with a friend. She took 6 months off to go travelling with a friend. And they ended up in Western Australia. Her friend wanted to come home. She wasn't ready. So she got a job as a governess on Wailu Station in the Pilbara. Just an extremely remote place where she has continued to study, albeit with a reduced schedule. So she's still working on her education degree, but she's also governessing full-time and supervising the classes for 3 students who live on the station.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. If you are somewhere remote, there are limited things to do. You may have time for that part-time study when you're not doing the job you're doing.
Yeah, and another one of my gappers, Mia Fagan, also is doing an education degree part-time, while what was initially 1 year, she's now decided to extend to 2 years on Ethabuka Nature Reserve in southwestern Queensland. So, yeah, some of them are using the time to get started on their study.
And I guess that enables them to pay for those university fees as they go rather than ending up with a big debt.
Well, yeah, that's a pretty strong incentive, isn't it?
Harriet Smith was another one you spoke to on Plevna Downs.
Yeah, Harriet's an extraordinary young woman. She was 17 when she went to school in Toowoomba, so she graduated high school at 17. She went to Plevna Downs, which is near Eromanga in southwestern Queensland. She'd picked up the car that she was driving 2 days before, the 4-wheel drive. Admittedly, her dad drove in convoy with her, but nonetheless, she drove her own car out there. I think it's about 800 kilometres from Toowoomba. And she's a governess to 2 of the McKenzie boys on Plevna, and she also helps look after the preschooler.
Of all those women you spoke to, girls, women, they pretty much all said they just loved the life.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the benefits are not the obvious benefits. And it was interesting because I spoke with most of these people at the beginning of this year, and then I had the chance, for various reasons, to go back and talk to them pretty well 9 months later. So apart from increased maturity and self-confidence and all those sort of attributes that I noticed, they'd actually had time to think about what it was that made the experience so worthwhile. While they all admit that the isolation is challenging at times, they say that that makes the social life that much better, because when you actually go to an event, it's such a great time because everybody's catching up and everybody's having a good time together. So it's not just that the work is rewarding, it's that the downtime is equally rewarding. A couple of people, and Miha included, mentioned to me that it also gives them time to do stuff that you perhaps at school or in the city don't have the time to do. Time to just be in nature, enjoy your environment, whether it's, bird watching or painting or photography or, practicing an instrument, reading. So to develop in other ways that potentially they hadn't identified at the outset of a gap year.
Moving away from agriculture, you also talked about the gap year that the Australian Defence Force offers. I love this one. You describe it as a try before you buy opportunity, and it really is, isn't it?
Yeah, I talked with aircraftsman Cody Kirkpatrick, and he's from Mackay in northern Queensland. He thought he was going to be a chippy, just like his dad. He'd even started looking for apprenticeships. And then one day in homeroom at school, there was a notification about an ADF open day in Townsville, which, again, that's 4 hours drive. So he had to talk his dad into driving him to Townsville. He attended the day and went home, thought about it, and heard about the GAP program that the ADF offers. And he just did a pivot and decided that he would give that a go. As it turns out, Cody has now just signed up for or enlisted for 3 years in the Air Force. So it's been such a success that he thinks this is his career and is excited to make it his career. He'll start down at Wagga and eventually he hopes to come back to Queensland and travel and make the most of what the Defence Force has to offer, which is a lot. As it turns out, he's in a financial position that most young school leavers would probably consider very attractive.
He had some really good things to say about that. I get free medical, free dental, free access to a gym and sporting facilities. If I decide to do a degree in any profession related to the Air Force, it's also free. And he also talked about, what did he say? My mates at uni are accruing debt and eating beans. And while I may not be earning as much as my mates in the mines, my work-life balance is way better and I get more benefits. So he's also even looking at the help that they offer with home loans. So it sounds like he's got it all planned out.
He's got it all sorted. And, he literally thinks he's going to buy a house next year or the year after. So good on him. He's found his place.
I just think that's such a great idea, the military gap year. And just for those that may like to know, gap years in the Army, Air Force and Navy are open to 17 to 24-year-olds and allow them to sample life in the armed forces without making a long-term commitment. I mean, that commitment was always a bit of a deterrent in the past.
Yeah, potentially.
For some.
Yeah, potentially, because I suppose unless you grew up in a military family, you've got no idea of what it's going to be like.
Yeah.
And if it's for you. I think if you make it through what Cody just called recruits, which is the first 9 weeks, and I gather is fairly intense. If you make it through that, it's for you.
Okay. Weeding them out.
Yes.
You also talked about other options for gappers, including paid placement overseas in agriculture or schools, and there's lots of organisations that will smooth the path for inexperienced travellers by connecting them with potential employers. Again, coming back to the big business of gap years.
Yeah, exactly. And, that extends not just people who'll find jobs for you. They for a fee, of course, help you do everything from get the visa that's necessary to open a bank account in that country, get your mobile phone connected. Even some of the services include meet and greet at the airport and some sort of orientation program when you land in the country that you're going to be working in. I mean, the more you pay, the more you get. And if you're concerned about, for young people who haven't travelled very much, that's probably a nice insurance that parents would like.
Yeah, and it probably reassures some parents, yes, as you say, yeah. We mentioned volunteering. You could work in a childcare centre in Zambia. You could do sea turtle conservation in Bali, look after horses in Portugal, or teach English in Japan. All sound appealing in their own way, Kirsty.
Well, yes, indeed.
Depending on how much money you've got, perhaps, whether or not you need to earn anything. You mentioned before Miha Fegan. She's a nanny. So, yeah, I guess you've got the governessing, nannying, au pairing. They're all slightly different in their own way, aren't they?
But au pairing is another option. Au pairing is an interesting, it's a more of a European construct, though there are lots of au pairs in Australia. The difference being that you will work a reduced working week and you're paid what is called pocket money. So in Australia, that it basically equates to the minimum wage. You're not going to live very high, wide and handsome or go to very many rock concerts on what you're going to earn. But you'll be housed, you'll live with the family and you'll be fed. So it depends what you need, yes.
One area we haven't talked about, which is really crying out for people at the moment right now, Kirsty, and is an option for gappers, is hospitality. You spoke to the CEO of Accommodation Australia, James Goodwin, who is urging young Australians to consider hospitality. I liked his perspective. At the moment, if you go to far north Queensland or the Northern Territory, you're likely to be served by a European or someone from the UK. It would be great if there were more proud young Australians greeting tourists and showing them our country.
What a great sentiment. As he said, Australia is so high on the Northern Hemisphere's list of places to visit. Why aren't young Australians just as excited to explore the country? He said that there are currently 30,000 vacancies in hospitality in this country. 40% of them are in rural and regional areas. There are lots of jobs out there.
Not to mention even more coming on in the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think nearly 60,000 jobs coming in the next 5 years. More vacancies, that will be. James also pointed out that, to start with, you might be pouring drinks, making beds, doing fairly menial work, but look where you'd be doing it and what you'd be doing after hours. You might be in a resort on an island or on the ski fields or working on a cruise boat or in some extraordinary location. But also it opens the door to careers in hospitality that aren't just the service-related careers. There's everything from accounting to HR to sustainability. The big resort chains all have these departments where career opportunities exist. And similarly, the opportunity then exists to move around because you can transfer, once you're with a company, you can transfer to other places and therefore see more of your country, which hopefully is what most Australians would like to do.
You would hope so. There's definitely the European tradition that we haven't kind of bred out yet, have we?
Yeah, there's an element of that.
Might be good to finish off with talking about the golden gappers, Kirsty. I did hint at the beginning of this that not all gappers are school leavers. Tell me about the golden gappers.
Yeah, it's such a great concept. I first became aware of this again on Isis Downs, where I met Sue and Shane Vaughan, who were at the sort of the end of their working lives. They'd run convenience stores forever. And so that was 7 days a week. totally, never, hardly any time off. So they decided they'd become grey nomads and retire. And then they just discovered that they actually were not quite ready to be grey nomads or to retire, and ended up via various means taking a job on Isis Downs, and Sue is the station cook and Shane is the bull runner. So they were the first golden gappers, if you like, that I'd met. And then subsequently I've run into quite a few. And recently we were driving the Central Arnhem Road from Katherine up to Nhulunbuy in northeast Arnhem Land. And the only place to stay there on that road is Manaroo Outstation. And there we met Steph and Peter Black, who are running the campground, the roadhouse, the Donga accommodation, basically. They're long-term teachers. They've taught all their professional lives. Then COVID came along and Steph had a few health issues, and they just thought, okay, push pause on that professional life and we'll take a break. They were caravanning, doing the big lap, and pulled up somewhere and heard that there was this job going and thought, well, maybe we'll give this a go. And sure enough, they signed a 9-month contract to run Manaroo Outstation Roadhouse. Working, well, they say, harder than they ever did as teachers, which is pretty hard, just because of the constancy of the work, and they didn't have much support in terms of assistance, and certainly not much time off. So amazing experience, and they say they'd do it again, even though they are going back to Brisbane at the end of the season.
So golden gappers, that might be something that we see more of in the future. Might you aspire to be a golden gapper?
I think it's no secret that my lifelong ambition has been to have a go at being a station cook.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. So when I met Sue Vaughan, I thought, oh, maybe it's not too late. I might still be able to fulfill that dream.
I must say, if I'm the station cook, you won't want to go there.
Well, I'm not going to say I'm good at it either, but
You are. I know you are. I've certainly tasted your baked goods. You haven't tasted any of mine. We'll leave it there, shall we? So that probably sums it up. And I really think, Kirsty, this is a must read for anyone in this space, whether you're a golden gapper or just a gapper or someone who's the parent or grandparent of a gapper. There's lots of fabulous information in your story, and you certainly brought to life some really interesting characters who explain it all for us. So I was thinking, the older people are the golden gappers at the end of their working lives. Maybe we need to call the school leavers green gappers.
Well, that's a nice concept.
As I said, Kirsty's story is in issue 164 of Outback Magazine. You can also see lots of lovely photos of all of the gappers doing their thing. Kirsty, what conclusion do you come to about the gap year after all this?
I wish I'd done one myself.
It's not too late, as we said.
What a fantastic opportunity to get out, meet people, get out of your comfort zone and earn money, hopefully at the same time, and also have time to reflect on what it is in life you really want to be doing.
Yeah, as you say, great preparation for life ahead.
Indeed.
Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Kirsty, you're a podcast virgin.
Not anymore. Thanks for having me, Terry.
Hope it was as good for you as it was for me.
You can't leave that there.
The stuff that we say we have to take out is often the best stuff. So it's best left.
Oh, really?
Anyway.
Do I get to choose?
No. Thanks, Kirsty.
Thank you, Terry. It's been lovely chatting.
Hi, Terry back again. I really hope you enjoyed that episode of the R.M.Williams Outback podcast. So we can continue to do what we do, please hit the plus button and subscribe to the free podcast so you'll know when new episodes drop. Oh, and please tell a friend who you think might like it. We'd also love to welcome you to the Outback Magazine family, So grab a copy every second month at your local newsagents or contact us directly and we'll have the latest edition sent to you anywhere in Australia with free postage. As I said at the outset, it's all at outbackmag.com.au. Don't be a stranger, get in touch. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for listening.